came into the tunnel and realized in the darkness that, unless I fell flat on my face, I was going to probably win the first women's Olympic marathon. And then thought, are you capable of carrying the title that will come with winning this race?
We don't want what Julie did to turn this into a freak show.
Some people, I'm sure, had funny feelings about it. I know the men did. I didn't really care.
It's not, about skin color and, all these other socioeconomic differences. You want your team to win.
I'm Celine Yeager.
I'm Sarah Gross.
This is 9 Voices for Title IX, powered by Inside Tracker,
a podcast that tells the stories behind the law that changed everything.
This is 9. 9.
Hey, Sarah.
Hey, Celine. I am so excited. I mean, I guess every week I come on and say, I'm so stoked. So it's like Never Cry Wolf, but that's actually how excited I am about this whole series. So we're on the final episode of 9 Voices for Title IX. And I'm stoked about this week's episode because my co-host from the If We Were Riding podcast, Sarah True, who is a legend unto herself, has a very fun interview.
She does. It's charming in many ways because they spend the first part chit-chatting a little bit about their gardens, and about tomatoes and potatoes, and I don't know, I can't remember all the vegetables, but they're neighbors, so it added a layer of intimacy that I don't think you get otherwise, and I think that made it special, especially since you're talking to the legendary Joan Benoit Samuelson, right? Who's an American marathon runner who was the first women's Olympic Games marathon champion. She won the gold medal in the 1984 Summer Olympics, not long after they decided, hey, women can run that thing too. Right. She talks about that. Women couldn't do it before 83 do the distance.
Yeah.
I think they couldn't do more than a mile. If that.
Yeah. I'm still shocked by those stats. I've known the stats for years, that there was this gap between the 1930s and then the 1980s where women couldn't run more than 800 and then 1500.
1500
right?
was that. Yeah, it's not even a mile.
Yeah, and exactly. And then they suddenly jumped to having a marathon in the 1984 Olympics. And then they didn't,
because women were just bushwhacking into it. We can do it.
Because enough women hid in the bushes like Bobby Gibb and jumped out and ran. Then finally they had to say, hey, wait a second, maybe women can do it. And so and then they didn't, I'm still struck every time that they didn't have a full track schedule for women until 1988. That's
so recent.
Joan's a 65-year-old woman telling the story of her lifetime. It's kind of mind-blowing.
And it's crazy that she came out and then held that American record. I mean, she smashed it. She smashed any expectation of what women could do in the marathon, just annihilated it, right? Yeah. She ran it in 2:21:21, I think, but it was an American record in the marathon that stood for 18 years.
Yeah.
Until Dina Castor broke it.
Yeah.
Crazy.
And Dina Castor's kind of that's my generation of athlete, our generation of athlete, I should say.
Totally.
That is, it's wild that she just kind of, that Joni was just that good without the support network for female athletes that we have now. And it's still now not as good as it can be. And I know it will be in future, but it just to train a little bit, she said she liked skiing more than running.
Right.
It's kind of the talent to just show up and run that fast is unreal.
And clearly, certainly put in the work but a true natural born athlete as well. I mean, she ran the Boston Marathon again in 2019, and she ran it in 3:04. Yeah. And I can't do the math right away, but she's 60 something, right? I mean,
I think she says she's 65.
Right. So in 2019, she
I see.
Yeah.
62.
Thank you. Something.
Yeah, that's crazy. Another thing that stood out for me was how she
go ahead.
that she continued to give props the whole way through the interview to the women who went before her. You know, she even mentioned Bobby Gibb, who was on one of our early episodes, as being one of the folks that like went out and made change, and that she had the opportunity to run in the Olympic Games because of these women who had fought, essentially. She doesn't use the word fight, but who had fought for equity.
Yeah, that stood out to me. And you know, we were talking a bit offline before we started recording, just also that, you know, that moment she was just like, she just ran and realized that she had this opportunity to win the Olympic marathon. And just like, that's such a thing that you can relate to as an athlete, that sort of moment where you're like, hey, I think I can do this.
Yeah, it's such a, you know, it even struck me, like it struck me first as an athlete because I have that experience of working, like you work hard for like a decade, you know, or years and years and years. And then you suddenly at some point find yourself in a situation, you're like, if I keep going and doing the thing that I've trained to do, I'm going to win.
Yep.
Right. Or I'm going to, you know, this goal that I have is going to be met or whatever. And it's like when she was describing that, like, oh yeah, I forgot about that feeling. And she even says that it's a good example for life too. And I totally agree with that. It's like, you know, for myself right now, like building a business, the things that we're building with Feisty Menopause, everything, like we just keep going and going. And then at some point there's an opportunity and you have to recognize it and you have to jump.
Right. Which is, I think we should let people jump into this interview and hear for themselves. Absolutely.
Let's do that. But before we do, I just want to give a quick intro for Sarah, who won her first. She won her first Ironman just this past weekend, although it will be a few weeks ago by the time this episode is aired. But Sarah herself, you know, who's talking to Joan, is a two-time Olympian. She was fourth at the Olympic Games in London in the triathlon. She's been fourth at the Ironman World Championship. So she has, her athletic background and the way that they talk and the fact that they have history together is quite clear in the interview. It's pretty great. So yeah, let's hear from our sponsors and then hear from Joni. Whether you run, ride, hike, or swim, you understand what it means to push harder, reach farther, and go the extra mile. This relentless drive runs in your blood. That's why Inside Tracker provides you with a personalized plan to build endurance, boost energy, and optimize your health for the long haul. Created by leading scientists in aging, genetics, and biometrics, Inside Tracker analyzes your blood, DNA, and fitness tracking data to identify where you're optimized and where you're not. You'll get a daily action plan with personalized guidance on the right exercise, nutrition, and supplementation for your body. And when you connect Inside Tracker to your Fitbit or Garmin, you'll also unlock real-time recovery pro tips after you complete your workout. It's like having your own personal trainer and nutritionist in your pocket. For a limited time, you can get 20% off the entire Inside Tracker store. Just go to insidetracker.com/feisty. That's insidetracker.com/feisty. I have an awesome opportunity for all you badass female runners out there. This winter, check an item off your bucket list and race the Miami Marathon produced by Lifetime. On January 29th, 2023, enjoy spectacular sights and sounds on a flat Boston qualifying course through some of the most famous spots in Miami. Choose between the marathon or half marathon distance. And for all the active mums out there, your little ones can enjoy a race of their own in the Lifetime Miami Kids Mile. Registration is now open and will be capped at 18,000 participants, so don't wait. Head over to themiamimarathon.com today to register.
Feisty Media's Title IX series is proudly partnered with Velo Rosa. Velo Rosa is a women-owned and operated cycling apparel company that creates mix and match cycling wear to make women feel comfortable, confident, and beautiful. Created by two avid women cyclists, they know the importance of high-performance biking shorts and jerseys that fit a woman's body. It doesn't work to shrink and pink men's gear and expect it to work for women. Bella Rosa believes cycling wear should be fun, comfortable, and visible. You want to be bright and to be bold and be seen. Bella Rosa's collections are designed to mix and match with coordinating kit pieces that allow women to get more mileage out of their cycling wardrobes. New for 2022, a completely redesigned cycling tank, reflective safety tabs on all of their tops, and more long sleeve options for those chilly morning rides. You'll find tons of great reviews on their site from women who love Bella Rosa gear. Their 5-star rated shorts prove that when women try them, they love the fit, particularly the yoga waistband, power leg bands, and the super soft, all black, what stains chamois. Whether you like to ride pavement, gravel, dirt, or your local trail system, cycling is about the community. Join the sisterhood of cyclists that is Bella Rosa today. Enter Feisty15, that's all caps, FEISTY, number 15 at checkout, and receive 15% off of order of full-priced cycling wear at bellarosacycling.com today.
Okay. Thank you so much for tuning into 9 Voices 9. We have a real treat as our guest is an absolute legend in the sport of running. She's an Olympic champion, trailblazer gardener, and a good friend of my in-laws, Joan Benoit Samuelson. Joan, thank you for joining us today.
Very my pleasure and honor.
I feel a little bit of pressure because you'll report down the street to the in-laws whether or not I do an adequate job. So not pressure just because I look up to you as a trailblazer in running, but because that personal connection. So you'll keep me on my toes, I know, in this interview. Now, so
I will. And they will. And I'm looking, when you said gardener, I'm looking at my dirty and calloused hands. And I am going to run some rhubarb down to your in-laws at some point today.
How is the garden looking right now?
Well, now it's getting some much needed rain, but I hope not too much rain all at once because it's been struggling, but it's green and growing. So that's a good sign.
Yeah, we're getting hit pretty hard with some rain today. Now, so I would say you're a fairly stereotypical Mainer. Is that an adequate description? But for listeners who may not know what the Mainer stereotype is, how would you describe it?
Oh boy, from across the border, you're asking a difficult question, meaning not the Canadian or Mexican border, but the New Hampshire border, live free or die, right? So I don't know. I people ask me if I've lived here all my life, and I say not yet. It's an old Bert and I-ism, but I've spent most of my growing up years here and most of my life for that matter. But I think it's just the hard work ethic and the honesty and the compassion for others that makes Maine the community of people that it has been and continues to be for years and years. Maine became a state in 1820, so that's a pretty long time, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I also think probably the love of the ocean is up there in the being a Mainer. Appreciation for potatoes, lobster, all that.
Good carbos, good protein. And, I usually schedule my day around the tides. I'm not a triathlete like you, but I do like to swim after I run or cycle. And so that maybe does make me a triathlete. I don't know. Maybe I should try another try. I tried one when I was 50. Now I'm 65. So I guess it's time. But no, truly, the ocean means a lot to me, and I can watch the tides come and go. And if I can jump in after a run or a bike, that's a bonus.
Yeah, I love that. No, it's interesting because I met an Olympic swimmer years ago, and he said that once he retired, he had no interest in ever going into the pool, doing anything athletic ever again. But it's clear that for you, being an athlete is a lifelong endeavor. What keeps you still interested in getting out there and running and being so active?
I think it's just the passion for what it is that I've done for years and years and continue to do. Obviously, I've overcome some challenges, but it's in my blood, if you will. And there are always goals to set, and I do that through spelling. It kept me motivated to keep going. But my life changed, as you're probably discovering now, with motherhood. It used to be scheduled my day around my running, and now I schedule my running around my day. And well, that happened with children, and I now, then I went back to scheduling my day around my running after the kids grew up, and now I'm sort of betwixt and between. I try to make some time for running or cycling every day, and in the winter I add skiing to that equation. And people think I lift weights because I do have a strong upper body, but it's not from lifting weights. It's from either gardening or bringing wood into the house during the winter months or Nordic skiing. So, I'm very holistic with my approach to everything. And I think that comes with living here in the state of Maine as well.
Yeah, definitely function is functionality of being able to do everything you need to do to be an independent person. And I think that's a pretty Mainer trait. Now, I was really interested to read that your first passion in sport was ski racing. And having grown up in Cape Elizabeth, which is, as would be implied by the name, on the ocean, it's flat, not a lot of snow. How did you get into downhill ski racing growing up there?
Well, my dad served in World War II as a member of the 10th Mountain Division. So he had a passion for skiing. And as soon as we were able to walk, he put us on skis. So that's how that developed. And, he was telling us at early ages that if we wanted to ski, we had to carry our own skis. And that adage, or that lesson, has stayed with me, meaning that I only carry what I can carry. And if you can't carry whatever it is you need, then forget about doing it. So, when he was 80, he went out to reune with his comrades in the 10th Mountain Division in Colorado. And he was bound and determined to do that one last time. And the first day at lunch, he said, well, next year when I come, and I jokingly said, next year, Dad, when you're 90, I'll come back with you. And sure enough, I went back with him 10 years later, and he was still skiing at altitude at the age of 92. So I think we know where some of my genes came from, but you've got to be responsible for yourself. You've got to carry your own gear. You've got to live with the ups and the downs. And, there are going to be high points in sport and low points in sport and training. And, I just never lose sight of that. So skiing was what it was. And then I started to run as a form of rehab after I broke my leg ski racing as a sophomore in high school, and didn't have to wait for the snow, didn't have to travel to the mountains, didn't need a lot of expensive gear. And, so that's really where my career started. And, I continue to ski both alpine and Nordic to this day. And that's all part of trying to live a balanced life where you balance mind, body, and spirit, which I think is important for anybody, whether they're an athlete or not. But you've got to have that balance in your life if you want success and you want to achieve the goals that you set for yourself.
Well, yeah. And I think those of us who live in places with real winter, if you actually get out and enjoy the snow, the winters aren't as harsh. It's nice to be outside and have those bluebird days. So I definitely respect that. So I'm interested that you started off in Bowdoin College, a small liberal arts school in Maine, and transitioned to running at NC State. Now, what was that process for you?
Well, you have to remember that when Well, let me backtrack a little bit. When I was in high school, Title IX legislation became law at the end of my first year. So there weren't a lot of sports available to me at that time, at least varsity sports. There was field hockey, so I played field hockey, and then I warmed the bench in basketball and skied on the weekends, and then ran as a member of a track club. And so it wasn't until my sophomore year when I couldn't compete because I was recovering from the broken leg that track and field was recognized as a sport for girls in high school. And so I didn't really have a chance to make a name for myself in any sport, and there really weren't scholarships available at that time. So my dad had gone to Bowdoin, and I have an older brother who went to Bowdoin, and I grew up at Bowdoin on alumni weekends, and I just loved the place. I also thought, well, maybe I want to pursue my skiing at that time. And, I looked at a couple of colleges that had ski teams, but I came back to Bowdoin, and then I played field hockey there for my first 2 years because cross country wasn't an option, although there was a girl in my class from Virginia who ran with the boys on the team, but I decided I'd prefer to play field hockey. And then one weekend, my sophomore year, we had 2 back-to-back games in field hockey on a Friday afternoon and on a Saturday. And then on Sunday, I found out there was a half marathon in Portland, Maine, which was only about a half hour from the Bowdoin campus. And Bill Rogers was running, and one of the best female runners in the country, and certainly in New England at that time. She was running as well, Charlotte Lettuce, who remains a really good friend today as Charlotte Richardson. So I wanted to see how I stacked up against Charlotte. And so I went down and ran the half marathon and wound up winning the women's race. And at the same time, I was running AAU cross country with Liberty Athletic Club out of Cambridge, Mass. Field hockey coach wasn't too thrilled about that. And then after that weekend, when I ran the half marathon, after the 2 back-to-back field hockey games, we had another game scheduled on Monday, and I could barely move off the 50-yard line. And back then you couldn't substitute players except at halftime. So she pulled me off the field at halftime and benched me, never to play varsity field hockey again. But I didn't want to quit. So I played JV, finished out the season. We were probably 2/3 of the way through at that point. And then that was the end of that season, was the end of my field hockey career. And that's when I decided to run, full time. And a lot of my results were posted, at online, or not even online, because online wasn't even a thing back then. But some of the college coaches who were all of a sudden receiving Title IX scholarships from their athletic directors for girls and women started to notice some of the AAU results, and that's how I got to NC State from Bowdoin. But it came down to NC State and Oregon, and I decided that Oregon was really far away and it rained a lot out there, and I didn't want to become homesick. So I went to NC State and was there for 3 semesters. I was only planning to be there for 2 semesters, but I contracted mono my second semester and felt obligated to go back for a 3rd semester because we had a chance of winning what was then the precursor to the NCAA, the AIAW. And so I went back for that 3rd semester, and we came in second, I think, to University of Colorado. And then I went back to Bowdoin to finish up.
In part because Scott was still there, or your now husband?
Well, yes, but he was in my biology class. I robbed the cradle. I was a sophomore. He was a first year. And really, that relationship, I had an eye on him, yes, but that didn't really form until I came back from NC State. And yes, that was one of the reasons I wanted to come back. But I also wanted to graduate with a Bowdoin degree.
No, I completely respect that. So when you were in high school, obviously the Title IX legislation passed, but was it around the time that you were in college that the impact on sport was beginning to be felt?
Oh, yes, most definitely. I mean, it was beginning to be felt in high school, because when I started out and track and field was only a club, the longest distance a girl could run was the 880, now the 800 meters. And, the State Principals Association, or collectively the High School Principals Association, National High School Principals Association, if there is such a thing, thought, the mile was just too far for girls. So it wasn't until, as I said, after I was coming back from my broken leg, that they added the mile. And I remember I couldn't run in the state meet, but I went up to watch, and a girl from Kennebunk High in Maine, all Maine schools obviously, won the mile, the first state high school girls mile. And I was just in awe of what she did. And her name is Brooke Marrow, and we have remained really, really close friends since that day, and see a lot of each other, or when we can. She spends her time between Idaho and Maine. So yeah, those memories are deep and lasting. And if I hadn't been watching that race that day, I don't know if I would be here talking. And I also don't know if I hadn't broken my leg, if would be talking, because I probably would have pursued ski racing and probably wouldn't have made it as far in that sport as I have in running.
Yeah, no, it's so fascinating, because normally we think that legislation's passed and there's going to be some time before the effects are going to be felt, because there's going to be lawsuits, and that different schools would have taken time to implement the changes. But it sounds like you felt it pretty immediately, the effects of that legislation. That's fascinating to me.
I was, I tell people I was in the right place at the right time. We still have miles to go, but I also feel that way about the LA Olympics. I was in the right place at the right time. And, as they say in our sport, timing is everything. So it was somewhat serendipitous, and somewhat, I think there was definitely a silver lining in all of it.
Yeah, I think listeners may not be aware that prior to the '84 LA Olympics, the longest event for women at the games was the 1500. Now, what's the history behind? Obviously, there's a big jump in distance between a 1500 and a marathon. So, what happened in those ensuing years for them to add? It was the 3000 and the marathon in the '84 Olympics. Is that right?
Yes. And then again, I think in '88 in Seoul, and then they switched over in Barcelona to comparable schedules on both the men's and women's side. So yeah, I did a lot of track racing during college and post collegiately. I just kept challenging myself with longer and longer distances, and trying to run those longer distance faster and faster. And that eventually led to the marathon. I didn't set out from high school track saying I'm going to be a marathoner. It was just an order of, sequential experiences and opportunities.
Yeah, I think, but to reference, the timing for you, it was pretty ideal that, behind the scenes, there was this, my understanding is there was a lot of lobbying going on to get the IOC to include longer women's distance events. And the timing was just coincided pretty perfectly with when you decided to really focus on marathon as a distance. Is that fair to say?
Yes, I didn't really know much about the marathon. I usually ran a Boys and Girls Club 5-miler in Portland on Patriots Day. And I'd heard about the Boston Marathon, but I didn't really know much about it, except that it was taking place at the same time we were running a 5-mile in Portland. And so when I experienced the Boston Marathon for the first time, it was brand new. I didn't know the course. I really know how to marathon. Truth be told, I actually ran the marathon distance in Bermuda in January of '79, which was my first Boston that April. But it was the day after a 10K, and a bunch of us started to run the marathon after the gun went off behind the pack to run 13 miles as a training run, and we got to the halfway point, and of course Marshall said, if you want to get back to the finish line, you're going to have to wait for the SAG vehicle, because there are no cars allowed on the course while the marathon's being run. And we decided we'd get there faster if we ran. So I did complete the marathon distance that January, but Boston was really my first real competitive marathon. And again, it was all new. I didn't know where the Heartbreak Hills were. I wasn't the favorite. Patty Lyons Catalano, now Dylan, was the favorite. And I wound up passing her at the top of the hills, not knowing when to expect the hills. And some guy next to me said, you just pass them. And so, I'm not one to look at marathon courses or any race courses before I run, because what I don't know won't hurt me. Excuse me.
I think that's definitely a good strategy for some people. We all know what works for us individually. Personally, I like information, so I would want to know where the big hills are. Now going into, so we'll fast forward a little bit. So 79, you do your first marathon. 81, the executive board for the IOC says that, okay, yes, we're going to have the marathon, the very first Olympic women's marathon in 84. So US Games, I think that's something that people overlook, is that when you're the host country, there's a lot of pressure. I know that the lead up to trials was a bit rocky with a surgery, 17 days before trials. But then you show up to the Olympics, obviously you win. It's the first event for the women that's that long, the most iconic event, I would say, of the Olympic Games historically. And how did your life change after that? I mean, I think you've covered the event itself, the trials, in countless other interviews. I'm curious how your life changed after you won Olympic gold in the very first women's Olympic marathon.
Well, first I have to give credit to all the women who preceded me in sport and who lobbied the IOC. They were the true competitors, the true winners, to get that legislation through and to get the marathon included. And Charlotte Richardson, my friend who I spoke about a bit earlier, was one of those women, along with Jacqueline Hansen, and then Roberta Gibb, of course, after winning the first Boston Marathon as a woman, sort of unnoticed. And then, Catherine Switzer came along the second year Bobby ran, even though Bobby beat her. Catherine was caught in that iconic photo with Jock Semple trying to get her off the course. And, to Catherine's credit, she started the Avon Marathon Series for women, which built awareness for the fact that women could run marathon on every continent. And so it was a real community of women. Nina Cusick was certainly involved with that, with the sit-in at the start of some of the marathons. And so, I didn't win that first marathon alone. It was due to the pioneering efforts and the brave efforts of all the women who preceded me in sport. But I think that I was in the right place at the right time. They forged the way, and I followed in their footsteps. And I think just because of the opportunities that were all of a sudden availing themselves to girls and women in sport, and knowing that the first women's Olympic marathon was going to be held on home soil, I had somewhat of an advantage. I mean, I think in everybody's eyes, the winner was going to be the late, great Greta Weitz. And obviously I was concerned about Greta because she had won, I think it was ultimately 9 New York City marathons. And that is unprecedented, and nobody will ever win that number of New York City marathons. But I was also very concerned with her teammate, Ingrid Christensen, who also came from a skiing background. They both did. So I just, I appreciated and respected the women in front of me and the women who were running with me in that first Olympic marathon. And so when I took the lead at the beginning, not wanting to do so, but wanting to run my own race, which is another sort of adage I've carried with me through my life. You have to run your own race. You can't run anybody else's race, and that's applicable to anything anybody does with their life. I just took off and nobody followed. And I just kept waiting for them to come, but they never came. And I was staring Bill Rogers in the face the whole time because he was doing the commentary, and I couldn't talk to him because that would have been deemed as coaching aid. So I just sort of ran and ran and ran, and then realized I had a chance to win the first women's Olympic marathon. And Nike had put a big, larger than life mural of me on a wall of a apartment building near the finish line in Watts. And I had seen that mural the previous fall. And when I had the knee injury and had the arthroscopic surgery, that mural was what kept me going. I couldn't lose sight of the fact that the company like Nike had put that kind of faith in me, and I didn't want to disappoint. So ultimately, that's what was there for me to answer to, so to speak. And came into the tunnel and realized in the darkness that, unless I fell flat on my face, I was going to probably win the first women's Olympic marathon. And then thought, are you capable of carrying a title that'll come with winning this race? And I didn't really know, but I didn't want to take any time thinking about it. So I just kept going and said, oh, you'll figure it out somehow. And thanks to family and friends, they've kept me honest. And the one thing I did say to them is that I want to give back to a sport and a community that have given so much to me. And that led to the founding of the TD Beach to Beacon 10K in my hometown of Cape Elizabeth, where we benefit a different children's charity every year. And it's transcended deep into the Cape Elizabeth community, the greater Portland community, and the state of Maine community.
So Beach to Beacon it started in 98, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Next
So
year,
it's in August. So
Saturday, August. This year it's August 6th. It has fallen on August 5th in the past, and that was the day that I ran in LA. And next year will be our 25th anniversary because we did not count the COVID years.
Yeah. Now, how did you decide that this was going to be something you wanted to do? Because it's not a small feat. Anybody who's tried to organize a race knows that there's a lot that goes on. And you also go out of your way to invite a lot of world-class athletes from all over the planet to your event. Why was this important to you to host this race?
Well, it was a way of giving back, and I had logged countless miles in Cape Elizabeth growing up in high school and college, and whenever I came home. And I really thought and continue to think that those roads are some of the most beautiful roads in the world. And how cool would it be to invite some of the best world runners in the world to my hometown? And fortunately, the idea was embraced very early on in my thinking about this. It wasn't embraced right off the bat, because I initially was at a board meeting for the Gulf of Maine, which was then the Gulf of Maine Aquarium and now the Gulf of Maine Research Institute. And one of the board members was the CEO of Union Mutual, which became Unum. And they're a great sponsor of the Beach to Beacon today. They sponsor the wheelchair division. And the CEO excused himself early from the meeting, and I followed on his footsteps and excused myself from the meeting after he did, and then quickly asked him a question outside the boardroom. I just said, can I have 2 minutes of your time, or a minute and a half? And I said, I have this idea, and explained what I just explained to you. And back then, the corporate logo for Unum was a lighthouse beacon. And I said, I want to start a race. I want to call it the Beach to Beacon. And I think it'd be a great title sponsor. And he had been an All-American at Villanova. And he was, I think, on the record-setting 4x4 relay team. And he paused for a nanosecond and said, that's a great idea, but it's not on my our radar screen right now. So he passed. And then a couple of years later, I had the opportunity to meet the bank president of what was then People's Heritage Bank and now is TD. And as I was leaving the office, his office, I saw a picture of him finishing the New York City Marathon, and turned on my heels and said, "I didn't realize you were a marathoner." He said, "Oh yeah, I've run 6 New York City marathons," and or something like that. And maybe it was 5. And I said, "Well, I have an idea I'd love to share with you at some point." He said, "Well, there's no time like the present." And I said, "Well, I want to start a race," and told him what I told the other CEO. And he said, "Let's do it." Didn't even blink. He said, "Awesome, let's do it." And that really was the impetus and the start of the TD Beach to Beacon 10K. And then, of course, hiring Dave McGillivray was a good move.
Yeah, I haven't competed myself, but I have watched it, and it's an incredible event. You definitely get the sense that the community is really proud to host it. So well, I know it's a labor of love, not just for the sport of running, but for the community, and it really shows.
Maybe we'll get 2 trues and maybe 3 in our 25th anniversary year.
Oh, 3. Yes. No, you're fairly recent grandmother yourself, right?
Yes.
How old is Lottie now?
14 months, and she's running. We were in the strawberry patch yesterday, and I'm one of those parents who will try to practice what I preach about not pushing kids into sports, let them find their own way. But she's already running, and she does not sit still very often. So I'm a little concerned, but she could probably go the distance.
I love it. I love it.
Probably 100 yards. So I figure, well, 10 yards for every month, maybe. That'll be her parents' decision. I'm staying out of it.
No, you're just there to support and teach her, how to grow things in the garden and spoil her a little bit. No,
Yes.
Abby, your daughter was a college athlete at Bates, right? She was a skier.
Skier and cross country runner.
No, did you notice a large change in culture, sporting culture, between when you were a student athlete and Abby's experience?
I think just the support given to the women's teams over the years certainly increased. And obviously Abby had more choices as a student athlete when it came to the sport she wanted to pursue. But yeah, I mean, it's improved every year. As I said earlier, there's still some, improvements to be made, but the fact that in track and field, in the Olympics, in world champs, the schedules are the same. I mean, that's a huge step. And that wasn't when I first started out, even though Title IX legislation had passed. So slowly we're making these increases. And now with the parity between the soccer teams, men's and women's, and the fact that people are realizing we can't put youngsters in sport and put them on the world stage and expect them to perform with the recent ruling for ice skating. I mean, I think these are all good and positive changes. And as I said, we're still making those changes, and we're still making inroads, and we're getting there.
Yeah. So hopefully by the time that Lottie's in college, then, and if she's going to be an athlete, we're not going to put that pressure on her.
I think the best thing you can do for young children is to expose them to a variety of disciplines and let them find their passions in their own paths.
Yeah, no, I think that's true. But there's nothing wrong with learning skills through sport that translate to other things. It sounds like your description, based on what you learned from your father, for example, about through skiing, it obviously translates to other areas of life.
There's certainly endurance when the going gets rough. I think, just the desire to persevere and to, practice patience. I always talk about the 4 Ps: passion, patience, persistence, and perseverance, and purpose too. There has to be a purpose to everyone's mission in life, I think.
Yeah. So what's your purpose?
I am still running around in circles trying to figure that out. I think just to live your life fully and to take the time to share your joie de vivre or your passion with others, and encourage them to find their passion. And it doesn't have to be in sport, but if it is, I mean, to me, one of the most rewarding moments of being the founder of the Beach to Beacon is the fact that we pull people off the sidelines who are inspired by what they see the runners doing in front of them, and they say or ask themselves the question, could I do that? And then they challenge themselves, and then before they know it, they're on a starting line, and they're taking care of their health and wellness by being active. And so anything I can do to inspire others, whether it's just living a full life and being involved in the community, or whether it's still trying to run in races and set age group record, whatever. If you can bring people along, I think that's a purpose and also a reward for others.
Yeah, no, the 4Ps are being manifest in a future project that Joni and her family are working on. And I think it's going to make a big difference to a lot of people. But in the meantime, I know that you are living out your purpose, and a lot of people are going to enjoy this podcast. So thank you so much for taking the time to share your story with everybody.
Well, thank you, Sarah. And when do I get to interview you for your story?
Never. No.
Yeah.
I'll come down the road and take some of that rhubarb,
Okay.
make a nice pie.
Will, and I wish you all the best this weekend, obviously.
Active women need more protein. And if you're training hard, you need a lot more, like upwards of 100 grams a day or even more. That can be a challenge to get through meals alone some days, so a good protein powder like Neurify Plus from Previnex can help. Neurify Plus is a vegan-friendly protein powder that is low in sugar, high in essential branched chain amino acids, and contains probiotics and digestive enzymes, so it's easy to digest and doesn't cause the gassy feeling you can get with other protein powders. Neurify Plus is laboratory tested and contains no soy, gluten, dairy, preservatives, or artificial sweeteners. Listeners of this series can get 15% off their first time purchase by using the code TITLE9, that's all caps and the number 9 at checkout. Just go to Previnex.com, Previnex.com, and use the code TITLE9 at checkout for 15% off your first purchase. If you don't like it, the company offers a 100% money-back guarantee on all of their products within 30 days, no questions asked. Again, use the code TITLE9 at checkout for 15% off your first-time purchase at Previnex.com. Female hair loss is a topic few of us want to talk about, but it impacts nearly 30 million women, so we should. And that's why we appreciate that Bonafide's healthy hair and scalp product, Sylvessa, is one of our show partners. With Sylvessa, Bonafide designed the first comprehensive system designed to restore and protect hair and skin affected by estrogen decline from the inside and out. It consists of a 3-part system containing a daily capsule, hair serum, and skin serum to be combined for healthier looking skin and hair. During a 12-week clinical study, Bonafide found that 92% of women saw improvement in hair volume, 82% saw improvement in hair thickness, and 67% saw improvement in scalp coverage. Over 8,300 uncompensated doctors in the U.S. recommend Bonafide's products. All of their products are prescription and hormone-free. And for listeners today, we want to give you 20% off your first purchase of Sylvessa and or any of Bonafide's products when you subscribe to any product. Just go to hellobonafide.com/Title9 and use the promo code Title9. That's hellobonafide, BONAFIDE.com/Title9, and the code Title9, all caps, TITLE, and the number 9 for 20% off at checkout. For the best prices and free shipping, go directly to the hellobonafide.com/Title9 website. That is their best offer anywhere, so check it out and use the promo code Title9 today.
Wow, Celine, what a great interview for our final episode.
Yeah, it's been so interesting. I mean, this was such a great way to end it because, she references the women who came before her, and throughout the series, we've had women do that, reference their moms, or, in the case of Patsy and Wendy Mink. And It's just so interesting to listen to them give homage to the shoulders that they're standing on, and then continue to do the work quietly and press on. And I think that has been the goal of this entire series. It's just like illuminating these women that have come before us and have done this work, so you can appreciate where we came from and look at someone like an Amanda Levy and see like, oh, but we still need to keep going because the work is not done. The work needs to yet be done. I mean, the Women's Tour de France kicked off today as we're recording. It'll be over by the time people hear this, but it's amazing. The racing has been amazing, but it's still like that took so many years to get that back on. And it's, and there was still the concessions of like, well, they'll be shorter and they'll be 8 days. And maybe that's better. I'm not saying that, but there's still these, well, women really don't do the same thing, right? That's still in the background. And it's still that, and we still, so this is all just sort of really illuminated for me how important it is to pick up the torches and keep going forward with them.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the people who kind of can see what's happening for what it is. So for your example of the Tour de France is a great one, because it's like we watch every year in the summer, we watch 3 weeks of men's cycling. We take it for granted. This is what we grew up with. This is how it is, and there are a lot of people who just accept that for what that is. But then there are some people who notice, wait a second, why don't women do this? Right. And then there are some people, those very few people like the Patsy Minks of the world, who say, how do I change that?
Right.
Right. And those are the people that, like, those are many of the women that we interviewed, and that's, as you say, that was part of the reason that we wanted to put together this series. I am so grateful for those women who saw those things, because it allowed opportunities for us in sport, and we wanted to tell their stories. So
I don't know that it's given me that, it certainly has left me with that perspective, because I don't spend a lot of time looking backwards. I do spend a lot of time looking forward, and in the here and now. Even I spend a lot of time just digging into like what needs to happen now to make things better, X, Y, and Z. But just listening to some of the clear-eyed vision that some of these women have, has made an impression.
absolutely, it really helped me feel not so alone, if that makes sense. So, I was someone who, like, as a child, observed that there were things that I was like not going to not be able to do in the world. I don't think I ever felt like I couldn't do things, but that I could see that the path to certain places was going to be harder for me if I wanted it. Like I could see that I was very unlikely to become the Prime Minister of Canada, for example. And I knew that when I was in third grade, right? We still haven't had a female Prime Minister. So like, those are the kinds of things I observed. And then to hear these stories, and I have made significant bids to make change in my lifetime, but to have these stories of women who really just dug in and went for it and did, it's so inspiring to me, right? Like Patsy Mink, who actually ran for president, right? Or Bobby, who, like, it would not have occurred to me to get on a bus for 3 days, hide in the bushes, and run a marathon. And this is like, if you think of how radical that thinking is, that piece has just been so inspiring for me.
Yeah. And I hope, that people listening to this are inspired, to do their own radical, whatever that looks like for you. Right. I mean, it doesn't have to be that extreme, but if we all just take one little radical step, it makes a big difference.
Yeah. Or supporting what other people are doing too. Right. Like, and you brought up the Women's Tour de France, and that's, it's happening now. So it's the top of mind for me, but even just like watching it, like watch women's sports, that helps. We don't all have to hide in bushes and run marathons. We can just support in those little ways, and all of that stuff will make a big difference.
Excellent. Well, I think we are, and I look forward to doing more of these. Nine Voices for Title IX, powered by Inside Tracker, is a Feisty Media production.
This episode was produced and edited by the amazing Amelia Perry.